Pogrom. Ruin, devastation, destruction. A reactionary, chauvinistic statement against any national group and accompanied by the plunder of property and by murder. Sergei Ozhogov. It's difficult for me to recognize that 1 year ago I didn't know anything about the Jews, and particularly about the pogrom. Many of my colleagues have different opinions about it. Some of them state they don't have anything against the Jews, the others that they could not tolerate them. And when I ask why, their answer is, I don't know, but my parents tell this. Europe entered the Fed year of the Fed millennium peacefully and joyfully, and, as always, in hope of a better future. Moldova, which has close ties to other European countries, welcomed 2003 in the same spirit. But this year has its own special significance. For our hopes are inextricably linked to our memory of the past. Mankind welcomed the 20th century with a boundless faith in the march of progress, as symbolized by such novelties as the Eiffel Tower, trains, the turbines of electrical power stations, the radio and telephone, airships and airplanes, and of course the car. Russia, with Tsar Nicholas II at its head, tried to follow in the wake of world progress. By the beginning of the 20th century, even Kishinev, the center of the province of Bessarabia, had acquired the features of a European city. But nothing had changed in the surrounding countryside. In rural Bessarabia, the peasants toiled and labored just as they always had in the past. There were no Jews among them, as, under Tsarist law, Jews were prohibited from owning land and engaging in agriculture. As a consequence, about half of Kishinev's population of 100,000 were Jews. Along with Russians, Moldavians and Ukrainians, Jews worked in factories, mills and workshops. Some were doctors, engineers or teachers, but for the most part they worked as craftsmen and small traders. At the same time, another kind of life was being lived. But only very few Jewish families were part of it. At the dawn of the 20th century, life in Kishinev still flowed in the time-honored fashion. In the churches, services were held in Russian, in Moldavian, and in the synagogues in ancient Hebrew. There was nothing to shake the religious faith for the believers. But a murderous plan had already been hatched, a plan which its authors were about to carry out. The Minister of Internal Affairs, von Plehve, a ruthless, authoritarian person, the inspirer and the author of anti-Semitic laws. He encouraged the pogrom, there his tolerant laws, a convinced Jew-baiter. The governor of Kishinev von Raben, virtuous and gentle, he loved life and women. The duties as the governor were carried out by the vice-governor Ustrugov. In the day of pogrom, he played cards as usually. The head of secret police, Levendal, the leader of pogrom policy in the Russian Ministry of Home Affairs. He supported and encouraged the heads of anti-Semitic movement. The policeman Hanzhonkov, his nickname was Beard, he was present at the robberies that have happened during the pogrom. The Jews, after him, were the main suppliers of the revolutionary movement, a convinced Jew-baiter. Pavalaki Krushevan, publisher and editor-in-chief of the newspaper Bessarabets, the executor of imperial policies, the main anti-Jewish agitator and a convinced anti-Semite. For several months, his newspaper published legends about the evil deeds committed by Jews. Under his guidance, a normal case was transformed into a horrifying ritual murder committed by Jews. Every issue published false information about this sensational crime. The newspaper was a source for the infamous leaflets that were distributed that week calling for an open violence against the Jews. His activities resulted in a blueprint for pogroms that was to become universally used in the 20th century. This church is still standing on the spot where 100 years ago, in April 1903, on the first day of Easter, the Christian population was gathering. There was a square in front of the church with show booths and amusements. A modern merry-go-round, but this is not like the old one that was situated near the Chufla church. This was the site of the incident which marked the beginning of the pogrom. It was from here, the Chufla church, that a wild, drunken crowd began its rampage, destroying Jewish houses, shops and workshops. Alexander Nazarov, a visiting merchant, was an eyewitness. Something terrible was happening. The air was full of down flying about. You could hear the noise of things being smashed, screams and the sound of weeping. Stones were being hurled through the windows of the houses. The Jews were being beaten. All this was going on before the eyes of the army and police. In the crowd I heard people shouting, "Work on! It is allowed today."
Когда вот эти погромщики напали на дедушку,
When these pogromers attacked my grandfather, his first thought was to defend his two young daughters, Chava and Ita.
От них. И ударили его железным прутом.
They beat him around the head with an iron bar until he fell down. Then they raped my aunts and began to rip open the feather beds and to search the house for treasure. Yuri Treskin, peace intermediary. Anyone could come along, shoot a Jew in broad daylight, and then stay around. Nobody would touch you. Elegant ladies could be heard passing judgment. Wonderful, this is admirable. Those awful Jews, it's about time. In response to their cries for help, the police and the official leaders at the best either told the Jews to calm down or explained that there was nothing they could do. The center of my nice town has been destroyed. The policemen were indifferent. They were coming afterwards and arrested the Jews who were defending themselves. Kinigshad's attorney, robbers and murderers. In their rage, they turned into executioners mocking and scoffing at their victims. The most brave were the butchers. They used knives to defend themselves, but still many of them were killed.
Și mulți au fost omorâți dintre dânsi tot.
In order to defend their families, property and lives, small self-defense groups were created in different parts of the town. Moisei Slutsky, the head physician at the Jewish hospital. In his book, Slutsky described the terrible condition of the pogrom victims. 49 killed, more than 500 wounded and mutilated, 1,500 houses, stores and workshops destroyed. Arise and go now to the city of slaughter. Into its courtyard wind the way. There with your own hand touch and with the eyes of your head, behold on tree, on stone, on fence, on mural clay, the spattered blood and dried brains of the dead. Descend then to the cellars of the town, there where the virginal daughters of the folk were fouled, where 7 heavens flung a woman down, the daughter in the presence of the mother in the presence of the daughter, before slaughter, during slaughter, and after slaughter. The anti-Jewish sentiments of Pleve, the Minister of Internal Affairs, which he may perhaps have expressed merely as a personal belief, could have been interpreted as a hint as to the desirability of testing out a pogrom policy. Such a hint may then have passed down the hierarchical ladder, reaching first Lavendel as being the wish of the authorities, and then Pronin and Khrushchevan as an appeal to take patriotic action, and, in its final transformation, reaching the Moldovan organizers of the pogrom as an order from the Tsar, Prince Sergei Urusov. The world shuddered. The flower of the Russian intelligentsia, Tolstoy, Gorky, Korolenko, expressed their anger and shame. A wave of indignation engulfed the United States of America. Protest meetings were organized in dozens of towns. In spite of a request from the US President, Theodore Roosevelt, the Russian government refused the petition.
Two
brothers of Madame Boroznets took an active part in the pogrom. We lived on the same street. Despite everything, they lived a mindless kind of existence. They caused the pogrom. Subsequently, the son of Madame Boroznets became a fascist. He wore their uniform and had an armband like the one the frontier guards had. That was before the war, the generation of pogromers. The 20th century has begun peacefully and joyfully, but the Russian Empire has been burned in the fire of the World War. Then the legend of the 2 angels came into being. The Russian angel, blaming the Nazis, placed on one side of a set of scales a mountainous pile of German arms. The German angel placed on the other side 2 nails that had been hammered into the head of a victim of the Kishinev pogrom. These 2 nails outweighed the mountain of arms. Those who take part in pogroms should be called terrorists, not thugs. If we use the modern term for those who instigated this pogrom and those who took part in it, then they are terrorists. These are people who killed without any reason. I have hardly tried to do something, and I will keep doing it. And I hope that other children will follow me, because the future belongs to children. I dream that in the nearest future we will not have to hear about violation and terrorist attacks as in the United States of America or some other countries. I strongly believe that everything will be in well. Anyway, we should act.
Это современный Кишинёв.
This is modern Kishinev, the capital of the Republic of Moldova. It is situated 1,500 kilometers from Moscow, 500 kilometers from Bucharest, and 170 kilometers from Odessa. Over 100 years ago, Moldova was a periphery of the Tsarist Russia, called Bessarabian Gubernia. At that time, the Arc of Triumph was erected to commemorate the victory over the Turks that had turned Bessarabia into a part of the Russian Empire. And that was where Jews were allowed to settle. From then on, in the music of Moldovan horror, we can hear a motive of their fate as well.